Ramon Kubicek, you have a singular privilege, namely where you live, in British Columbia.
True, yes.
And what you see out your front window.
Yes.
Is this, to all intents and purposes, a room with a view that we see here?
It could be, but not my room with a view. I have a stunning view from my apartment, but it's of the coastal mountains, which is completely different. This brings to mind more the interior of British Columbia, which is like the Okanagan and the Caribou. And the forests are not that dense, and you get a lot more of these kinds of tan and ochre colors. And in some way, the beginnings of desert to some extent. I love all of that, very much drawn to it. But as a friend of mine said, who could not make up her mind, would it be, basically living in the interior or on the coast? You can't live both at the same time, So you can just pick one and then visit the other. So for many years, I used to go into the interior, not always the Okanagan, but the Caribou and those sort of places. And that's what reflects it. You can have thousands of square acres where no human beings live.
Mm-hmm. The color palette here is so unlike the works we've seen elsewhere. Yeah. There's an organicism. There's something natural, something living about these colors. What led you to work with this chromatic scheme and to work in landscape?
Just to be faithful to experience. As I said, when we started the discussion on the original painting, the Janus-faced painting, one looks outwards, one looks inwards, or in between. Here it's solidly looking outwards. And the beauty of the mountains and so forth. But even beauty has danger. This has nothing to do with the painting itself, but I remember years ago taking my daughter to the Okanagan. She was only 12 at the time. And I wanted to walk in the hills. And so I said, are any good paths that lead up there? And the local said, I wouldn't take your daughter out there. There are cougars out there and lots of rattlesnakes. I don't know whether he was having me on. Although I know about the rattlesnakes because someone offered to get one and went off to the side. 2 minutes later, came back with a rattlesnake. So, it was interesting. I'm not frightened of those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. But it brought me that even something, the view, and of course, typically we know the way we frame such things as the view of nature is always out there. Nature's out there. But often, and certainly in Canada, you can be in the middle of it, even though your photograph or your painting doesn't show that. You can be right in the middle of it. So the cougar is right there with you, and you may not know it. Mm-hmm. Right now I live in Gibsons. Well, there have been cougars in the town of Gibsons. Mm-hmm. I had a cougar right outside my window. So I could see it. It was not a problem.
There's something about this work that I consider fundamentally biological, as though it's the biosphere that you're presenting to us. And there is a biological aesthetic here, which seems so separate and distinct from other works. Yes. But is there not a relationship between the biosphere and cosmology, which you explore in your own spirit quests as an artist?
Of course. The biosphere is the intelligent soul of nature, and we are part of that. So there's no distinction. I'm actually doing something, just coincidentally, to mention that I'm actually doing a series on nature of various kinds, but not necessarily nature that's out there. Some of it nature out there, but some of it is so close that you're not actually sure what you're looking at, but definitely all and only references to nature. And the colors I use or speak to that. So, that's simple to say. I'll see where that evolves. I have one painting also with this palette, which is called Green is Not Just a Color. And so it reflects ideas about nature as well as simple nature itself.
A final question, Ramon Kubicek. In other works, we see the sky. In fact, I would refer to your work often as the starry, starry night. But here, the sky is so slim,
Yes.
slender, just a slice. And in fact, you seem to challenge where exactly is the horizon line in this
true.
painting?
That's true. And I put a lot of emphasis on the bottom third of the painting. We darken the colors, that darker element and the darker realms and so forth. So yes, I want us to be able to look not beyond at the sky, but right what's there in front of us.